deafening rattle like several glass doors slamming shut punctuates the quiet ambiance as a hail of gunfire blasts through the office and into the company's directors. A few slump dead on the mahogany table around which they were sat, while others writhe on the floor in pain. The gunman flees, dropping his weapon, and charges out the fire escape. A chorus of wounded cries and moans rises from the boardroom as Mayumi Shibasaki pulls herself from the floor, wiping her hands down her suit, punctured with bullet holes. A few heavy thuds follow as chunks of metal fall from the material where they sat, finding her flesh resistant to the bullet spray. She looks down at the wounded board members and sucks a few mouthfuls of blood from the open wounds on display. Her mind fixated on two things. Whoever ordered this hit couldn't have known how resistant her flesh should be. Whoever ordered this hit would pay for a new damn suit. Breaking up. Stone flesh. Resistantia. Whatever you want to call it, Fortitude is one of the pinnacle disciplines in vampiric existence. Much prized by mortals, Fortitude grants the ability to resist physical and mental assault. Few vampires survive longer than a century without at least a mote of fortitude, especially in a world where violence is common, and not even kindred are safe. In these nights, fewer vampires use fortitude to resist the stun than they do to withstand violent harm, fire, and supernatural coercion. Those possessing fortitude exemplify the solid pillars of kindred society, able to withstand blows and charm without movement or sign of dilapidation. Few vampires feel as secure in their immortality as do elder blue bloods and ferals. Within the world of Vampire the Masquerade, fortitude was always considered one of the 8 cardinal disciplines. Disciplines that were easy for everyone to learn. Animalism, Auspex, Celerity, Dominate, Fortitude, Obfuscate, Potence, and Presence. These disciplines didn't take special situations to learn. These disciplines were more available to every kindred if they had a teacher, and they didn't have to imbibe the blood of a practitioner to learn them. They were innate within the vampire's blood. That meant a lot due to the fact that fortitude is one of those disciplines that you really won't go a long time actively playing in the game if you don't have. Most of my characters have learned fortitude at one point or another, and it tended to be the discipline that I would go after first. And the fact that they've expanded it to not only be physical harm, but also now mental intrusion, makes fortitude a lot more versatile. I can still see a lot of vampires having a limited range of fortitude due to the fact that they are either going to have a vampire that's specialized in one type of fortitude, or they're going to end up having a more of a coverall, which is going to stop them from getting into higher levels. Characteristics. Type, physical. Yes and no. I will give them that, because of what they've done in V5. Where fortitude used to be resistance against all physical damage, it now has a lot to do with mental resistance when it comes to interrogation, torture, and things like that. So the fact that it's marked down as just a physical is a little off, considering now that it should be physical and mental. Masquerade threat, medium. Eyewitnesses undoubtedly react upon someone taking a terminal beating or a hail of bullets and getting back up, seemingly unhurt. Favorite cover-up explanations include erroneous recollection in the excitement, the bullets only seem to hit, special effects, YouTube pranks, or the tried and tested must have been PCP rationale. I kind of wish this was a subcategory all on its own, the favorite masquerade cover-ups. Primarily because that's fun. It was just a fun thing to read. The favorite cover-up explanations include blah, would be fun on all of it. But I can also understand why they didn't. Some of them aren't going to really have that kind of thing. I really don't see favorite cover-up explanations being marked under aspects. Blood residents, melancholic. Survivors of war, abuse, or misfortune. Endurance runners, mountain climbers, infantry, and special forces. Those with very powerful immune systems. I like the fact that it slipped in the whole people with high immune systems, or people with very powerful immune systems. But when I read off that list of survivors of war and abuse or misfortune, I don't just see they lived through it. I see they survived it. They kept going after it. When I read Fortitude, it really does seem like people of strong will. People who just, no matter what they go through, they're just going to keep getting up and fighting. Getting into the discipline itself. Level 1, Resilience. Endowed with supernatural endurance, the user can strengthen their physical resolve. Cost, free. System. The user adds their Fortitude rating to their health track. Duration, passive. That's an interesting way of putting it, that you add your Fortitude to your health track. The reason I'm saying that is because that adds 5 levels of health onto your character sheet. That's pretty overkill. But I can understand exactly where that comes from in a dice game. When I first started playing, I played Vampire the Masquerade LARP using Laws of the Night, and which I'm sure you guys are sick and tired of me repeating myself when I say that kind of thing. But the reason I'm saying that is because the 3 disciplines that caused us the most trouble running a LARP game, and when I say we, I mean we had a council of storytellers, because we played a very large game that had various genres involved. We had vampire, werewolf, fae, hunter, we had vampire, werewolf, hunter, fae. We had demons for a little while. We had a very large, expansive game, and crossing over things like rage actions for werewolf and celerity actions for vampire got a little bit confusing. So we ended up doing a homebrew simplification of the disciplines and a lot of the various other powers. We needed to be able to keep track of things a little bit simpler, and celerity, potence, and fortitude can be a really weird thing to keep track of in a LARP setting for the old 2nd edition revised system. So what we did is a 1-for-1 basis. If you every dot of potence you had, you dealt 1 more damage when you hit somebody, which got ridiculous because we had 6th generation vampires in our game, and having them deal that much damage just did not work out in the long run. We expected players to be on a more reserved level, and they were for the most part. But we did find that our homebrew of the 1-for-1 kind of ruined it a lot of aspects for the game. So I don't suggest that system, although it was a quick fix. For Fortitude, it was for every level of Fortitude you have, you gain another health level. And for Celerity, for every level of Celerity you had, you gain another action that round, which, again, Brujah became gods. Just putting it out that way. I have 6 actions. Let's just stay a standard neonate 13th gen who has 5 levels in both. I get 6 actions per round, plus I do 6 damage per hit. Really sucked, even if you had Fortitude. So, not something that I suggest. But the fact that they took that for the Fortitude, which truthfully in those 3 disciplines is the least damaging discipline to do this with, and put it just as the first level, that's pretty ballsy, and hats off to World of Darkness for coming up with that. I'm drinking just regular black Assam tea today, by the way. You can tell by my classy mason jar that I drink out of. Level 2, Unswayable Mind. Now, if I'm mistaken, Unswayable Mind used to be a combo discipline in the Anarch book. Um, Something I'm going to have to check out later, but that's a pretty interesting thing to see in the standard Fortitude now. The user gains a mystical ability to resist any attempt to sway them through mundane charms, coercion, or wiles. Some exhibit unswayable mind as zen-like calm, others as supernatural stubbornness. It's a good description. Cost is free. The user adds their dots in Fortitude as extra dice in any roll made to resist coercion, intimidation, seduction, or any other attempt to sway the user's mind against their will. This power also works against supernatural abilities such as Dominate and Presence. Duration, passive. That's interesting because, like, as much as I enjoy V5, I find a lot of their descriptions to be kind of eh. And it specifically says that the user gains a mystical ability to resist any attempts to sway them through mundane charms, coercion, and wiles. That sounds like to me that it doesn't work against supernatural threats such as Dominate and Presence, but the rule here under the system says that it does. So I'm going to just chalk that up to me not liking the writing, and that's it. But it's a fun discipline. I love the fact that Fortitude can be considered mental at this point. Level 2, Toughness. All vampires with this power exhibit an innate ability to ignore damage that would otherwise inconvenience or even disable others of their kind. While this power alone gives no protection against banes and other aggravated damage, the protection it confers adds up in the long run. That description's a little vague, but it's a vampiric power. Whatever. Cost, 1 rouse check. System. Subtract the fortitude of the defender from all superficial damage sustained. This occurs before halving the damage and cannot reduce the damage below 1. Duration, 1 scene. Alright. So the reason why this discipline, and actually Fortitude in general, is it catches me is because, and this is me being set in my ways, I'm used to damage being set in 3 categories: bashing, lethal, and aggravated, which is no longer the case. We now have superficial and aggravated damage, which is an interesting way of looking at things. But superficial damage is basically things that are healed easily, which is so strange to me because there's now superficial damage that you have half and supernatural damage that you don't have. So that is very strange, but I'm getting off track. I do like the fact that you subtract your fortitude from any superficial damage down to 1. You can get to the point where you can take severe damage and just be like, that hurt, but stop it. So now we come to our first amalgam, Enduring Beast. Amalgam Animalism Level 1. The user shares a small portion of their unnatural toughness with the animals they influence. Teeming swarms and great beasts alike exhibit a resistance to fleeting injuries, almost equal to the vampire themselves. That's a good description. I like that. And I like the fact that it starts with the whole, like, teeming swarms, because the first thing that I think of is that one animalism power that allows you to have the bugs and stuff living inside of you, which is so much fun. The idea of, here comes a swarm of biting, obnoxious insects who want to protect their master, and you're swatting at them and smashing them, but they just keep coming. I think we've all faced that mosquito that has fortitude. Cost, free, for Familius. 1 rouse check for other animals. Dice pool, stamina plus animalism, 4 non-familius animals. I really do like how the familius has ingrained itself so deeply, and I need to play something with animalism again. I really do. Currently, right now, I'm acting as storyteller for a very small group of people, but the character that I have that is technically my player character is I always do that, by the way, just in case somebody else wants to run a night or a story where they take over as storyteller for for the night or for a month or something like that. I always keep one character that is base book that grows with them, receives the same XP and stuff like that. That way, I can always slip into a PC role if somebody else wants to take charge for a little while. And currently, my dude's a La Sombra, so I don't have animalism right now, which is strange for me. System. The vampire can choose to extend some of their fortitude powers to animals affected by their animalism. Any animal thus imbued gains additional health levels equal to the fortitude dots of the vampire. Using this power on their familius is free and automatic to imbue other animals besides their familius. The user must make a rouse check and roll a test of stamina plus animalism, difficulty of 3. The user can fortify one animal per point of margin, and when the effect ends, remove unmarked health first. This may result in the animal expiring. Duration, 1 scene. That's fun. That's just fun. That's one of those disciplines that's more it's more fluff than anything. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, it definitely does have systematic repercussions. But the idea of somebody going, "Oh, you're attacking me with an animal," pulling out a gun and shooting it, and the animal just continuing to come at them, that's intimidating as fuck. And depending on the type of animal, especially, it can cause some problems. But I don't know. I could see where a storyteller might want to do an intimidation check or something when it comes to that kind of thing, depending on the animal. Of course, when I stop and think about ghouled animals, there was a damn Brujah in one of my old games that had a Chihuahua. So, yeah. Level 3. Defy Bane. By preparing themselves with an expenditure of power, the vampire can make themselves temporarily resistant to fire and sunlight, as well as other grievous wounds that would threaten them with final death. I always have an issue with anything that makes a vampire have resistance to fire and sunlight. Maybe not fire. I'm fine with fire, but sunlight. I mean, I used to have one of my old characters had a necromancy ritual that allowed him to stand in the middle of bonfires. He used to convert fire damage to lethal damage, and then his fortitude could convert the lethal damage to nothing. So, literally stand in the fire and do nothing. But the concept of fire not hurting a vampire has always just been rough when it comes to that. At least for me. Anyway, cost. 1 rouse check. Dice pool, wits plus survival to activate reflexively. So, that's an interesting way of putting it. I want to see exactly what we got here. System. The user can convert a number of aggravated damage equal to their fortitude rating to superficial damage when sustained. They may not heal that superficial damage for the rest of the scene. This power converts a number of damage per scene, not per wound or per attack. Example. Salmon has fortitude of 3. During the upcoming brawl, he could, for example, convert 2 points of aggravated damage to superficial, then convert 1 more point of aggravated damage taken the next turn before his power expires. Okay. I don't really see how that was any different from reading the system, but, whatever. The user can renew this power once expired by making another rouse check. If endangered unexpectedly, the user can activate this power reflexively with a wits plus survival roll difficulty of 3. Upon receiving aggravated damage, if the user fails the test, the power does not activate. If they win the test, they must make a rouse check to pay for the power. Duration: 1 scene or until expired, whichever comes first. I think this is one of those disciplines that just kind of like bounces around in my head a little. I don't grasp it as much. I understand it, don't get me wrong, but I think that they over-explain it a little bit in this. I think it's very interesting also that this is one of the few disciplines where if you fail the test, you just lose. It doesn't work. Most disciplines, you activate it, and it sees if it costs something. This one, on the other hand, if you win the test, you have to make another rouse check on top of that. So, interesting.
Fortify the inner facade.
Instead of hardening the vampire's physical frame, this power allows the user to protect their thoughts and emotions from supernatural prying. Their mind appears completely blank, while their aura is, for lack of what better words, flat. That's interesting. It reminds me very much of a power that Tzimisce used to have in their old clan book, where they could use Versatility on their chakras to make it so that they weren't readable. But that's pretty interesting. It doesn't say that you can't be identified as a vampire or anything like that, though. But it does make it so that it is harder to read the aura. So that's pretty neat. Cost free. System: increase the difficulty of using Scry Soul Aspects 3. I gotta get used to that. I'm so used to calling it aura perception. Telepathy, Aspects level 5, and similar powers on the user by half their Fortitude rating rounded up. If the rules allow the user to resist these powers, they add their Fortitude rating to their dice pool instead. Okay, so if for some reason the power, and I wonder if this is duration, 1 scene. I wonder if this power is just giving them license to have different abilities show up in the future, because it says if the rules allow the user to resist these powers. So I can't help but wonder if that means the user of the mental ability that's trying to get in, or if it means the Fortitude. I think this is just one of those powers I'm not grasping the wording on again, and there's a few disciplines like that, but I really don't see what the difference is between that, other than I do want to point this out, is that it says that disciplines that can penetrate into the mind to gain information, the user puts half of their Fortitude rating in there. But if the rules allow the user to resist these powers, they add their Fortitude rating to their dice pool instead. It does not say half. It says they're full. So let's just go and say that they have 4 levels of Fortitude. If you're adding it to a difficulty, you're adding 2. But if you're resisting with Fortitude, you're adding all 4. That's pretty weird that it's got that big of a difference. But if I am understanding that wrong, please correct me. That's why I'm here. Not only am I imparting my knowledge, I'm seeking yours. Level 4. Draught of Endurance. The blood of the vampire becomes saturated with the power of Fortitude, conveying a part of that power to anyone who drinks of it. This is the Fortitude equivalent of Draught of Elegance. Draught of Elegance being the level of celerity where you can impart powers of celerity onto other people. Cost: 1 rouse check. System: drinking a rouse check's worth of blood directly from the user gifts the drinker with temporary Fortitude equal to half the Fortitude dots routed down of the donor. The drinker gains the same powers as the donors up to that level. Duration: 1 night for vampires until the next feeding, or The vampire reaches hunger 5. I can't get over how much I love the fact that there are separate rules for vampires and humans when it comes to this kind of thing. Because it does make sense. It does make a lot of sense to have a power work on them, but also have it be different. Duration, if anything, because of the thinness of the blood of a human or a ghoul. I don't know. Again, this is just one of those disciplines that we homebrewed before anyway, and it just makes me happy that enough people also had this mentality to allow it to be part of the actual system. So, I don't know. I know that a friend of mine has worked with World of Darkness on several projects, and I've seen ideas that we've all thrown back and forth and bullshitted with show up in books, in both Masquerade and Requiem. So it's very cool to see these things pop up in books. I don't know. I'm amused by it. Level 5, Flesh of Marble. Flesh of Marble used to be an elder level discipline, so but I can understand, since they kind of eradicated the concept of elder disciplines in this, that is neat that it's still carried over. Now, on the concept of eradicating disciplines, the idea that they got rid of the elder disciplines has a whole level of ramifications, because when you look at the things that you can do with Fortitude, and you've got a vampire who's been around long enough, who's low enough generation to have elder level disciplines, you just continuously build on to what is available in here, so that you don't have 5 levels, you could have 6, 7, or 8 levels of Fortitude. It makes it kind of sick. And no, they're nowhere near the kind of things that you read about in elder guides like Laws of Elysium and things like that. But, and I'm going to throw this out there, this doesn't stop the concept of Methuselah or Antediluvian level powers. Those are gonna, those are the kind of things where a storyteller says this happens. You know, there's typically no rules for that kind of thing, because there's that strong, and they're meant to be that strong. So the idea of, like, in the Bali clan book, where it talks about how the Lasombra called a tidal wave of shadow to wash through, those are considered lost gifts that only the Lasombra Antediluvian or the Lasombra Methuselahs would have. So I don't take this as the end-all be-all sources of disciplines, because vampires back then were also massively different creatures. That can actually be looked at when it comes to character creation in the old LARP system, where you switch from Laws of the Night to going back to Faith and Fire for discipline use and things like that. Because there were some disciplines that didn't exactly match up. They show that there were some powers that didn't exactly carry over to Modern Knights for one reason or another. Another thing is aura. In the Dark Age books, we have aura, where we don't have that kind of thing in the Modern Knight books for Mind's Eye Theater. And what aura did was it modified your character's test pools by 1 or 2 points, depending on how high their conviction rating was for their path. Stepping outside of the topic on that one. So, level 5, Flesh of Marble. The power of the blood causes the skin of the vampire to harden, taking on a marble-like sheen that is still supple, but stops almost any blow before momentarily breaking and reforming. A vampire using this power is almost impossible to destroy outright, barring a lucky blow or physical restraint. I just love the whole concept of that. The idea that, like, if you get shot, you see the skin shatter. Like throwing a rock at a porcelain vase. Just spiderweb cracks forming all over the skin. and then healing back together. Cost: 2 rouse checks. System: with this power active, the vampire ignores the first source of physical damage each turn, including fire, but not sunlight. If confusion arises about which source is first, the storyteller either decides based on the narrative, or the vampire ignores the most damaging single source that turn. A critical win on an attack roll bypasses this power. Duration: 1 scene. That's a very interesting power. I've never actually... This is the first time... One of the reasons I love this channel is it gives me a chance to read things that I haven't gone through all the way. And that is a fun power. You ignore the first source of physical damage for the turn. Now that lasts a scene, so you have to throw a test. You do your rouse check, and your skin hardens. Just automatic. Not automatically, you actually have to like force your blood into doing that. Which is good, because that would be masquerade threatening if it wasn't something like that. You do your rouse check, and your skin polishes over effectively. You become stone. You become that gargoyle. So that is a very interesting power. The fact that it's not just automatic all the time. I'm very, very interested, however, also that there's no reflexive action version of this, where it only works for like the turn or something like that. Prowess from pain. Injuries and impairments now only fuel the powers of the vampire, who grows stronger and faster from each blow, rend, or tear received. Only utter destruction can stop one who can call upon this Fortitude power. Cost: 1 rouse check. Before we get into the system, that sounds like a Tzimisce power. I don't mean to do that all the time. I do understand, yes, Tzimisce, bing, are my favorite clan. I love them very much, but I do find a lot of disciplines that were considered clan specifics carry over. And this was a level of, I think it was I can't remember if it was a Fortitude, Vicissitude combo discipline, or if it was a 6th level Vicissitude power. But in the Tzimisce clan book, this one, we had a power called Ecstatic Agony. Alright, here we go. So, Ecstatic Agony. For Tzimisce who can experience Ecstatic Agony, pain becomes power. The more wounded he is, the more potent he becomes. The fiend delights in every slash, punch, bullet, or burn, and channels his pain into physical prowess, or incredible displays of Cain's gift. System. After a player spends 2 willpower points, the character becomes even more powerful when experiencing pain. For all non-reflexive actions involving the physical attributes or use of a discipline, add his wound penalties to the dice pool. For example, add 2 dice at the wounded health level. As the character heals, the bonus wanes. Treat incapacitated or final death normally. This power lasts for 1 scene. And there's Met rules too, Mind's Eye Theater rules too for LARP. But that's what I'm talking about. Prowess from pain sounds very much like Ecstatic Agony. Cost: 1 rouse check. System. Upon activating the power, the vampire no longer suffers any dice penalties from health damage sustained, such as physical impairment. Additionally, they can increase 1 physical attribute by 1 dot. Derived stats are ineffective. For each level of damage on a health track, aggravated or superficial, the user's attributes cannot exceed a value equal to their blood surge plus 6 through this ability. Example: Darren has blood potency of 3, giving him a blood surge of 2. He cannot increase his physical attributes past 8 using Prowess of Pain. Duration: 1 scene. Those were the common actions of Fortitude. However, in the Companion, we have something that the Salubri tend to practice: Valerian. Level 2 Fortitude, Amalgam Auspex 1. The vampire projects their fortitude outwardly, willing the power of their blood to mend the injuries of another vampire. I think it's interesting that Valerian is a healing discipline when it was always a warrior discipline. But I can see where it could be used in combat, especially if you were helping someone else in a battle. Cost: 1 rouse check, and additional health depending on circumstances. Dice pool: intelligence plus fortitude. System: the vampire rolls intelligence plus fortitude against difficulty of 2 to mend a number of superficial damage levels equal to the margin on the roll. The user mends 1 aggravated health damage level for every 3 successes in the margin. Use of this power takes a whole turn. If the vampire spends an entire scene instead, reduce the difficulty to 0. Valerian must be used on someone other than the vampire invoking this power, and can be used only on vampires. A subject can be affected by the power only once per night. If the user mends more than 1 subject per night, the user suffers superficial health damage equal to half the number of successes in the margin for each additional subject, as they take on the burden of so many charges. Duration: not applicable. The more I read into the Salubri, the more I like and hate them at the same time. The rewrite in general, because things have been switched around. And what I mean by that is they used to be able to use their powers on humans and vampires indiscriminately, and now it does seem like they could heal the mental wounds of humans, but when it comes to physical wounds, they can only do that with Kindred. They can only typically do it like once per night without taking severe damage themselves. Plus, they have their god-awful flaws. The clan bane of being too damn tasty, and also bleeding profusely from the forehead. A lot of the rewrite stuff I really do enjoy, and I don't think that I would use them any differently, other than the ability to heal humans on a regular basis, where it says that they take the damage of so many charges when they're using Valerian. That's another thing. Valerian was always a warrior discipline, and now it's being seen as a healing discipline. So I don't know. We're gonna have to end up doing some kind of we're gonna end up doing another Salubri video at some point in time, because we are going to be handling more things that they're involved in the future, in either Metaplot Monday or maybe I've been planning on redoing my god awful clan videos, just because I feel like I could do better. Fortitude is one of those disciplines that all vampires attempt to get, or at least should. I know most of my characters have attempted to get 1 or 2, but I've tried not to go overboard on that. Most of the time I try to stick with the in-clan disciplines, but now that the lines are blurred on that one, we'll have to see how things go. I know that the Lasombra that I'm currently playing definitely wants to get a hold of some Fortitude, because that could be very useful not to die. I'm interested in hearing what you've done with Fortitude, any interesting uses and things like that. Old combination disciplines such as King of the Hill and things like that pop into my mind when I think about Fortitude. Hopefully we can all endure until the next video. I'm Voivode Maquette. This is our World of Darkness, and this has been our in-depth look into the world of Vampire the Masquerade and the discipline of Fortitude. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.